A large portion of the Jewish nation has returned to its homeland, but the heart, soul, and mind of much of the Jewish nation are still in exile mode. This state of affairs must and will inevitably change. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
The Jewish citizens of Israel are experiencing a tremendous upsurge of violence aimed at them by Arab Muslims. The frequency of these attacks is such that every hour or two another attack is reported. Is there a reason or reasons for this recent increase in Muslim violence?
One reason, the first that should be mentioned, is one that I have spoken about over the last few years a number of times, and no, I will not tire of mentioning this fact, because this fact is essential to understanding the dynamics of what goes on here in the Middle East, the dynamics and the workings of the Arab and Muslim mind, and the foolhardiness of Israeli leaders. I'm referring to the release, the prisoner exchange release that was organized in order to obtain the release of the captured Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit in October 2011 for the release of, in exchange for the release of well over 1,000 convicted terrorist murderers. At the time, it was claimed by many, I among them, that this would without doubt lead to an increase in violence directed against Jews throughout Israel, and for that matter throughout the world. And of course this was, by many people who for their own reasons choose to live in a fantasy world, this was pooh-poohed by many such people. The statistics since that time, from the beginning of 2012 and down to the present time, October 2015, the statistics are very clear. There has been a steady and significant increase in violent activity on the part of Arab Muslims in Israel directed against Jews from that time to this. Constant and steady increase without let-up. There have not been ups and downs. There are no spikes, not really. It is a constant and ever increasing wave of violence, which without a doubt was initiated, was given a kickstart by this Gilad Shalit deal. The situation before that deal was relatively calm. There were relatively few attacks on Jews throughout the country, and for that matter in the world. Also, the situation was somewhat better than it is now, and since that time the situation has deteriorated. There is an individual who is responsible for this situation, for this turn of events, and his name is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and that is one major reason for what we are seeing today.
Are there other reasons?
There is another reason, and this is also a very elemental and significant concept which underpins everything that goes on between the Jews and the Arabs in general, Muslims in general, and for that matter with the rest of the world. And I refer to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Just yesterday, Prime Minister Netanyahu announced, and not for the first time, that he has no intention of changing the status quo on the Temple Mount. When he says he has no intention of changing the status quo, he refers to the fact that he continues, with the help of course and the being egged on by the Israeli left, etc., and the fumbling, unprofessional Israeli police force, etc., he continues to uphold the illegal denial of permission to Jews, which is guaranteed to them by law. There is a law in Israel which refers to free access to all holy places, to all individuals. This right has been denied for decades to Jews to pray on the Temple Mount and to have free access to the Temple Mount. This was a policy that was instituted immediately after the Six-Day War by the well-known archaeological and antique artifact thief Moshe Dayan and a number of other feckless Israeli politicians at the time. And this has been upheld down to the present day. In fact, the situation has deteriorated markedly over the last 2 or 3 years. Over the last 2 or 3 years on the Temple Mount, Netanyahu has allowed the Islamic movement in Israel and other bodies to literally pay a monthly wage to people, men, women and children, to riot on the Temple Mount, to throw stones and rocks at police and Jewish civilians who enter the Temple Mount area. He allows them, Netanyahu and the police force, etc., the court system, the establishment allows the Arab population to terrorize Jews who go onto Har HaBayit, the Temple Mount. So rather than in fact enforcing and maintaining a status quo, he has allowed the situation to slip and deteriorate very, very significantly. But the real issue that we have to understand is that Netanyahu's avowed assertion that he wishes not to change the status quo is not the solution, but rather it is the problem. And I wish to quote from the prophet Haggai, very first words in the book of Haggai say as follows. כה אמר אדוני צבאות לאמור, העם הזה אמרו, לא עת בנו עת בית אדוני להיבנות, which translates as, Thus speaks the Lord of hosts, saying, This people say, the time is not come, the time that the Lord's house should be built. And it goes on to say, ויהי דבר אדוני ביד חגי הנביא לאמור, העת לכם אתם לשבת בבתיכם ספונים, והבית הזה חרב. Then the word of the Lord came by Haggai the prophet, saying, Is it time for you to dwell in your well-timbered houses, whilst this house, referring to the temple, lies waste? وَعَتَى, and now therefore, כה אמר אדוני צבאות, thus speaks the Lord of hosts, שימו לבבכם על דרככם, take note of your actions and what you do and what you do not do. זرعתם הרבה והבאתם מעט. You have sown much and yet you harvest little. אכול ואין לשובעה. You eat but you are not full, not enough to be satisfied. שתו ואין לשוכרה. You drink but you are not replete with drink. לבוש ואין לחומלו. You have clothes but you are not warm. והמשתכר משתכר על שרוד הנקוב. And he that earns wages earns enough only to put into a bag with holes in it. In other words, the money slips through the holes and he feels as if he has almost nothing left. The purpose of these words of the Navi was to point out that all the trials and tribulations, the general situation at the beginning of the Second Temple period, 2,500 years ago, here in Eretz Yisrael was very dire. The economic situation was very poor, so was, by the way, the political situation. In other words, the Jews were being attacked and hampered at every step by the non-Jewish people who had invaded the land in the absence of the Jewish people over the previous 70-odd years. And the situation was very, very dire. And Haggai came to tell the people, if you think that you will live here in this land and build your houses and live your lives in peace and prosperity, and allow the house of Hashem, the temple, to lie in ruins or to be waste or to be empty, then you are making a very big mistake. Hashem will not allow this to happen. And I do want to mention here that before someone points out that, well, I don't like the idea of animal sacrifice, etc., etc., who wants a temple? I need to point out at this juncture that this has nothing to do with whether one likes or does not like whether one accepts or does not accept, or whether one is excited by or turned off by the concept of animal sacrifice, as described in the Torah. Even according to those authorities in Jewish tradition who were of the opinion that in future times, that is to say today, there will be no further animal sacrifice, that has nothing to do with the question of whether the temple has to be rebuilt. The concept of building a central place of worship to Hashem, the one true God, in Yerushalayim, on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, is an essential, fundamental precept of the Torah and has nothing to do necessarily with sacrifice. A temple can be envisaged with sacrifice or without sacrifice. It is, after all, described in the prophet Yeshayahu, Isaiah. The temple is described as a beth tefillah lechol ha'amim, a house of prayer for all peoples. In other words, the essential purpose of the temple is to be a house of prayer first and foremost. The concept that, the very notion that that edifices built on the Temple Mount in our absence, which proclaim a great lie, which is Islam, which, as we all see, is inimical to human civilization and decency and progress in every possible way, which claims that the Torah is a lie, but of course quotes from the Torah all the time, with small changes here and there, like claiming that the Akedah, the event where Avraham was ordered by Hashem to sacrifice Yitzchak, his son, was actually not Yitzchak but Ishmael, as is written in the Quran. Well, I leave you to decide for yourself which is the original version and which is the edited and somewhat censored version. This religion of lies, falsehood and violence, that they should remain on the Temple Mount, and that the true word of Hashem, the Torah, and His central house, the Mikdash, the temple, should not exist, and therefore the concept that the status quo is to be maintained, this is exactly the problem. This is why the situation that we perceive today is upon us, because Hashem will not allow us to forget that we have a purpose and we have a duty and a responsibility, and as long as we do not fulfill that duty and live up to our destiny, we will not be allowed to live in peace. And Netanyahu is a person who has no understanding of this, and therefore he cannot be the leader of the Jewish people.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.